She is full of gratitude. She is full of talent. It is the great Lori Brooks, who is a sports television freelance director. You can see her on the Pac-12 networks. You can see her with Turner, NBC, the list goes on. And she's a 7-time National Sports Emmy Award winner, 15-time nominee. And I had to work through multiple channels just to get her on here. And she is on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. This is not your ordinary, let's chronologically go through Lori's career. And yeah, we're going to touch on stuff that have been defining moments, but this is learning about how she thinks, what obstacles she's overcome, what makes her inspirational. We're going to get the full story here of Lori. And Lori, I really appreciate you doing this. And I wanted to start here. So I know you live in Walla Walla, Washington, and I saw you've got this nice porch where you live. And I know you spend a lot of time out there. What are some, go for it.
I actually sold that home over the summer, this past summer. I'm an empty nester in an apartment now. But yes, I spent so much time on that porch just chilling.
That was a porch I would think you were able to replay a lot of your broadcasts on. I would think when you look out there and when you spent so much time deprogramming, what were the big moments that you could trace back to when you let your mind just sort of wander?
Well, actually, it's funny because that porch was kind of my sacred space where I would do my reading and wine trying and visiting with the neighbors. But I take every opportunity to kind of reflect on work stuff and how can I do better? How can I do this? How can I do that? And I've had a couple of events the last couple of years that have just kind of wowed me. And I'm not an easily wowed person. But I mean, I got to go to the bubble, the NBA bubble. Doing the Olympics last year for NBC, the 2020 Olympics in 2021, that was bizarre. It was really strange. It was unlike any experience I had had. So I do take, I don't have quite the serene spot anymore as I did on that front porch, but I do think it's so important just to reflect back on things and to really appreciate the good ones and just make sure the bad ones don't happen again.
Why do you have, and I see this about you, Lori, you have such a gratitude, such a joy, such an appreciation for those who you work with. And this is something that's been a really important part of who you are over the course of your career. Why have you taken that angle to the business?
It's what I know as a family member of a very large Irish family back in Wisconsin, where I grew up. It's the kind of family that would, if you treat someone with love, if you treat someone with respect, if you embrace them as a human being, well, that's part of being a family. And it's funny because I go to these family reunion things, and oftentimes there's ex-husbands, ex-wives there, former boyfriends and girlfriends. Just because you're no longer officially family doesn't mean you can't be part of the family. And so I've taken that kind of an approach to my work people, my work family. And it just creates gratitude, actually. It's just really, really organic. Kind of a corny phrase, but it's true. I mean, yeah.
Part
just
of
where I came from.
And part of your immediate family, you've got 2 daughters.
I do. My best productions ever.
Yes. So what do you see, Lori, as far as comparing and contrasting the way in which sort of you oversee things in a broadcast and then the way in which that looks in relation to you as a mother and how you sort of are wanting to man things in that department as well?
Well, they are adults now, and I don't man much in their lives anymore. But the organizational approach to directing a broadcast is very much like directing a week in any child's life. I mean, or any hour, I mean, I would think before I would go off on a trip, or even when I was staying home and doing prep work or research or whatever, you just had to have everything buttoned down, with one kid going this way and the other going this way. And, oh, gee, there's 3 other kids in my house tonight. Oh, okay, well, let me throw some more pasta on, and it's kind of parenting, well, particularly 2 very socially active girls, was very much like the be prepared for anything approach to television production. I
And
don't know.
yeah, that's
Not everyone might find that comparison, but for me, it was really, really natural.
and being that mother for them, and being strong-willed. You touched on your very strong family roots. Being so strong for them over the years, and how much do you trace that back to where you're from, and using that to what you've become and how you've raised them?
It all goes to my lifetime hero, my mother of 6. And she was a nurse, a volunteer emergency medical technician. She taught CPR for the Red Cross. She was a Girl Scout leader. I mean, she never stopped. She just never,
Wow.
ever stopped. And, sometimes we as the children felt left out of things, but that was just a teenage brat or a little kid being not, seeing big picture. But what she brought to all of us and taught us was never put yourself first, never. And how could I not have taken that lesson
Yeah.
to being a mom? So that's what I did.
Your father embodied that mantra of not putting himself first as well. I saw that he served in Korea.
He did.
He
Yeah.
did.
Very
And
proud of that. He was.
where
Yeah.
do you feel that to this day you think of him most?
Um, he was a portrait photographer, my dad was. And he touched, during the time that he had his small studio in our little town, he touched everyone's lives because he did their high school graduation photos. He did their wedding photos. He took family pictures a lot of times on Christmas Day, because another family was getting their whole clan together. He would leave our little Christmas morning and go take pictures at somebody else's house to document their family gathering. And oftentimes, when I think of how you can touch people in a community without really even trying, that's when I think of him. And also, he had this thing where, because he wanted people sitting up straight in his photos, he'd kind of like say, posture, posture. So like I find myself slunched over like this, and every now and again I'll feel like some little tickle in my back, and I swear it's my dad, coming up behind me and just reminding me to sit up straight. And yeah, I'm superstitious.
Lori Brooks is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. Of course, she is a renowned sports television freelance director with several different networks. I'm Bryan Fenley, of course, with Fox Sports Radio. So your dad loved to take pictures. If I were to take a picture, Lori, of the moment in your life when you've had to be most persistent, or that you've shown the most perseverance and overcome something, what would that be for you?
Cancer. I'm a breast cancer survivor. It's something I'm very proud of. In fact, actually, I usually use the word, rather than survivor, victor, because I firmly believe that it was a team effort that I got it. And, you mentioned earlier my Emmy success. Those are all team events. Being part of a team is so important to me. And so that moment of perseverance that I feel the most strongly about is my recovery from breast cancer. And I did not do that alone either. So there you go.
What did that team look like as you were recuperating and fighting, and they were there for you?
Well, of course, there was the medical team where I had my surgeon, my primary care physician, my radiation oncologist, and my regular oncologist, and all the allied staff with them. But I had, well, my daughters, of course, and I had friends. I have the sisterhood here in Walla Walla that uh they just are right up there with my own sisters. And I have three other sisters. I have three sisters. I had a friend who came from Atlanta to take care of me when I had radiation. Who does that? I mean, she left her husband behind and her business behind and came and took care of me. Thank God she's a world-class chef, but still, I was grateful for all of it, not just the food.
So she spoiled you in the
She
process.
spoiled me. Everyone did. Everyone did. And I can't possibly, again, back to the gratitude. How can I not be grateful for that?
Yeah. And I see how you, in having that gratitude, when you're working on a broadcast, it's sort of like you spoil others by your kindness and your work ethic, and people see how that radiates off others. And let's go back to you getting in the business. And here you are starting at CNN, and there happened to be this writing class that you took. And how
Mhm.
formative was that for you to this day in being a part of that?
I would say it wasn't as formative as one would think because I didn't care to be a news writer. I thought I did, but I didn't. But what it reminded me of was that I am a storyteller.
Yes.
And I, when you're being taught that by a veteran news writer, as I was there at CNN, that's a great foundational thing for our industry, to just remember you're a storyteller and you're telling the story of an athlete you may or may not have met, or a coach you may or may not have met. And then you also have to remember not just that you're telling their story, but it has to be right, because you know what, their grandma's watching.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, you can't possibly get their hometown wrong or make sure that the graphics operator spells it right, because grandma might see that and just, I don't know, call up the network or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's foundationally, it told me I was a storyteller.
From a broadcasting perspective, what does your approach to storytelling look like when you're in the middle of a game, in the middle of a match, whatever sport you're covering? What's the angle that you prefer to take?
Um, it's very situational, but I if I've done my homework and I learn about the athletes and I know the sport inside out, as I like to think I do for almost all the sports I cover, which is why I don't do football. Keep me away from football. But if there's any kind of human emotion involved, I want to document that. This player biffed 4 serves in a row during volleyball. Each time she came up, and here she is for the 5th time, only now it's match point. Well, I gotta approach that one a little different than I did 2-2, say, in volleyball. I mean, it's just, and that helps drive my storytelling. And again, situational. Maybe a player played for a university and then went to the transfer portal, and now they're playing for a different one and they're playing each other. Got to play that up a little bit too. What it all comes back to, though, is if I've done my homework, I can tell the best stories. If I've done my research, I can tell the best stories.
Lori Brooks is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. How have you been most moved with your own experience of emotion in seeing something unfold in a broadcast, on a court, on a field, as part of a televised program that you were a part of?
It's the same thing, but it has happened multiple times, and that is a horrible injury to an athlete. Gosh, I just, I've seen a couple of players experience the injury that halts their career. And you don't really know it at the time, but you know it's bad. Um, there was one I recall a couple of years back where a player went down, and I don't remember what the injury ended up being, but it really looked like her leg went in some bizarre thing. And her coach went hustling over to her immediately, even before the trainer did. And then her dad came out of the stands. And it just, I'm like, ready to take two, ready. I mean, I was a puddle. And so that has probably happened in terms of pure emotion, or I should say, tangible emotion, a number of times in my covering of college sports and professional sports and things like that, primarily college. That's the thing about women's sports. Typically, they go for 4 years at the same school. You get to know them even better, and you get to understand them a little bit better. But then there's the intangible emotion where when I've done some of my Olympic games, where I'm just moved by the visuals, and I'm just moved by the notion that this little kid watching the Mexico City Olympics in fall of 1968 said, wow, this is fun to watch. I want to be part of this. And then the 72 games and enforced that even further. And so that kind of intangible emotion is also pretty awesome.
Where does that intangible emotion lie with you from a perspective of, there's the athletes that are kids and they watch the heroism from those older than them do great things on television in the Olympics. To you, when you were younger and you were in awe and you were like, I want to be a part of that, where did that sort of matriculate in your life?
Well, I was a child of Title IX, so as a result, I did not see a lot of women athletes. So I became enamored with primarily male athletes, but every now and again there'd be, some opportunity to see a woman athlete. I could go, that's so cool. That is just the neatest thing. But for me, it was more like the older kids in town, and even then, like, I mean, I think they started a basketball program when I was in 8th grade. And, so I didn't have quite the, if you can see it, be it chance that people do now. But I still found my heroes. I very much found my heroes. They were in sports that I didn't really participate in, swimming, competitive swimming, that is, track and field and stuff like that. But they still were heroes.
You've had moments where, we discussed earlier in this conversation, where you've had to be a hero and overcoming cancer in some of those events that you've been able to get through. When you look at the span of your career, Lori, in starting out at CNN and then working so many different Olympics and other networks, what about you has changed as far as the way in which you look at yourself in terms of your confidence in what you do, your grasp of what you can do, and the spirit that you carry yourself with, from the person you are now in the business to, say, the one who got started in the business?
The person who started in the business thought they could do anything and then didn't do a lot to make it true. I just figured I could skate by, and like, now it's no, I gotta work and I gotta keep learning and I gotta keep listening and being decent to the humans around me, and a friend in the control room. I actually recently got a review where basically it said the crew was not happy with me, and I'm just like, oh my God, what did I say? What?
Yeah.
And it was, I still am not sure it's true, but I was clearly, I believe, misunderstood. And it's important for me to bring a unity. And I don't think that was ever important to me as a new person in sports television. It was just like, do my job, do my job. And now it's no, no, no. We're all together in this. We're all together in this.
The team aspect, as we sort of wrap up here, it, as you mentioned, it plays in every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things I wanted to recognize here, is that as much as the broadcast and working together is something that you thrive in that setting, it's also the obstacles you've overcome outside of the workplace, and how being that team player and having, as I go back to this, the gratitude and the joy and the appreciation for what you've done and what you've overcome has made you such a radiating force of positivity in this business. And that's why, Lori, I wanted to have you on here. I
Oh,
want
thank you.
people to see the full angle here of Lori Brooks and why the sports industry is so much better off with her in it. Lori, so grateful for you to come on and tell your story. I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks again for making the time.
My pleasure. Really was.